Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Are you ready to rock? You are off stage with DWP and Eddie Scott Trunk. This is your life. Ed, how you doing?
Good, Gary. How'd you know my middle name? I'm surprised. You did some research.
A little bit, you know. I was going to go for Edward Scott Trunk, but people are like, who the fuck is that? Hey, man, thank you for joining us. It's part of our VIP Music Industry Week here at Offstage with DWP. You are somebody who is literally in the foxhole on the front lines of rock and roll with us by our side. For those who don't know Eddie Trunk, he's a music historian. He's a radio personality who hosts shows on SiriusXM, including Trunk Nation on Volume and Hair Nation, right?
I have a weekly show on Hair Nation, daily live on Volume, yeah.
Yes, 106 for anybody that's a great channel. For anybody who's heard of it and hasn't gone on it, by all means, there's a plug. He's also has been a TV talk show host, including That Metal Show from 2008 to 2015. He's a published author, a couple books, including The Essential Hard Rock, and he's the #1 hard rock metal cheerleader on planet Earth.
And don't forget about the TV show Trunk Fest I did for Access TV, where we did episodes at DWP concerts and festivals. That's airing, by the way, for everybody if they didn't see it. 7:30 Eastern every morning. Access TV has been showing an episode, including the ones we did. I think we did for you. We did. I think we did Louder Than Life. We definitely did Kentucky,
and maybe Louder Than Life in Louisville. Yep. Yeah. I mean, look, you have been part of Louder Than Life, Epicenter, North Carolina, Rock on the Range, of course, in Columbus, Masonic Temple. You know, it really takes somebody like you, like myself, and Wimmer and Shamey and Keith and the team at DWP. If you're in this genre, this lane, you've got to be waving this rock flag. It's got to, like I said, rock and roll, you don't choose it. It kind of chooses you. You know, I'd like to get into that with you. You know, when was your oh wow moment? Like, I'm not going to be a dentist. I'm not going to be a lawyer. Rock and roll is going to be a huge part of my life. When was that?
Well, I was not good in school at all. I was an outcast in high school because of the music I liked, which wasn't considered the cool hip crowd. And I was just passionate and defiant about it. I've never been anyone that cares about what people think. I don't believe in guilty pleasures. If it makes you happy, that's all that should matter. So I was defiant about what I liked, even though it put me in not with the cool kids as early as that. And I just I wasn't dumb, but I just didn't really have an interest in a lot of what was going on in school. And I was so consumed with rock music that I just was interested in finding something to do to help spread the word about the music I love. That's all it was about. And to that end, when I was in high school, the first thing I did was I wrote the high school music review column in the high school newspaper.
And then Madison High School in New Jersey.
Madison, New Jersey, yes. It was called Sharps and Flats, the column. It would have been 81, 82.
Did you have to cover the musicals too in order to justify?
No, I was still talking about the same stuff I talk about now, believe it or not. So I did that because I'm like, okay, these students that dislike me for the music I like, they're going to be forced to read about it because I'm going to write about it. And then my hometown has 3 colleges in it, and one of the colleges. What's that?
Which ones?
Well, it's Madison, New Jersey. There's 3 colleges: Drew University, Fairleigh University, and St. Elizabeth's, which is an all-girls school my mom used to work at.
Okay.
And Drew came to the high school one year. I think it was between my junior and senior year. And they said, do you have any students here interested in music or radio? Because we'd like to keep our radio station on campus on over the summer while the college students go away and keep it going. So I immediately raised my hand, and I got my toe in the water with radio there. Lasted about a month because we started partying in there and they shut the program down. And then I got a job that, honestly, Gary, at that time I felt like was like my dream job of all time, which was working in my local record store in a mall. And
so it was literally a mall, like second floor, third floor mall next to,
Yeah.
Frosty Freeze and The Gap. And
yeah. It was a local New Jersey chain called Owlwood Records. At the height of their success, they had maybe 13 stores in the state. And I used to go there when I was in high school. Right out of high school, I started working there.
Is that where you bought your first record, perhaps?
No, my first record was Kiss Destroyer, and it was bought in the local record store right in Madison, which is no longer there, called Scotty's Records.
I got to tell you, Eddie, sorry, Kiss Destroyer comes up a lot as a first record bought or stole, or copied. Kiss Destroyer is, yeah.
Well, yeah, but for me, it's interesting because Kiss was absolutely my gateway band into rock music, which absolutely set me on my path of rock obsession. No doubt about that. But there actually was a band before Kiss, which was the first time I felt I heard proper rock music. And that wasn't kids pop that I was listening to. And I was only 10 years old, but it was a transformational moment for me. There was a power pop band called the Raspberries.
Sure.
And their biggest hit is a song called Go All the Way. And at 10, I heard that in the backseat of my parents' car on AM radio. And it completely, was the first time I heard distorted guitar chords mixed with melody. And it was like, wow, this isn't the Partridge Family, because that's what I'd been listening to up to then. I was 10.
Yep.
And that I became consumed with that band at 10 years old. And then my friend showed me Kiss Destroyer, and then it was like all over. And then I was all in. But that's like the seeds of the musical end. But as far as my obsession in the actual business, it started with going on a mission to do anything I could to share music with people. So to that end, I wrote in various magazines. I did radio right out of high school at my local hometown radio station, started what many feel is the first ever show focused on metal, which was in '83. And it was never about, let me try to become famous or popular or rich or any of that. It was everything I did was driven by, how can I share this music with others in a respectful way? That was very important to me. I didn't want to fall into the cliches. I wanted to be respectful and have this music treated properly. So record store, worked for a record company, worked for various radio stations, was writing, did some TV. All of it was just about trying to push the music that I loved. And of course, I'm not going to lie, along the way, as you get older and a family and you have bills to pay, you need to find a way to support yourself with it too. I'm not going to lie. But the drive was all about helping push the music.
Well, we're off stage with DWP. We have our good friend Eddie Scott Trunk with us. I'm probably the only guy who's said Scott twice. And, a fun fact, he was born in 1964, which will make him a year older than me for the rest of his life. But with that said, your Raspberries was my Monkees. Which led to the Beatles, which led to the Kinks and the Who, which led to Led Zeppelin and Sabbath into Bowie and all that. The Monkees for me was the first time I too heard kind of distorted guitars, and I don't think they played their instruments, but it was the Wrecking Crew guys, which is a killer documentary. There's a plug for everybody, the Wrecking Crew doc, while we're all in quarantine to watch that. But that's a real transformation moment that you could have the sing-along. You're a song guy, like me, or the Raspberries, Monkees, bands like Sweet, and in the 70s, where, yeah, I know you like your rock and you like your Marshall Stacks.
But it's got to have vocals and hooks. Yeah.
Yes, sir. That's always been an important thing for you.
And I'll tell you, Gary, real quick, last 3 weeks on my daily volume show, I've had a different artist on every day. I mean, today was Neil Schon from Journey. The other day, Alice Cooper. I mean, I've been talking to all these artists every day. And the two things I'm hearing from all of them is, during this lockdown, they've all been working on music. So we're going to see a flood of music coming sooner than later. And the other thing they've all been saying is, especially the older guys who, it's the stamina and the relentless nature of touring could get to them a little bit. They're all like Alice was saying, it's actually been good. I've been home for 3-4 months. I'm actually recharging my batteries. I'm actually reconnecting with some family. I'm actually being here a little bit, dying to get back out there. But this has been sort of a good sort of reset for me. And I think that's going to be a big thing too. I think fans are going to see it in the way the artists project and the appreciation the artists have to be back on stages again. So it's really a two-way street.
Right on. I want to talk a little bit about how we wave the rock flag, all of us at TWP, you, and when you became kind of connected to us was through our fandom of that metal show. We all knew each other beforehand, but the thing about that metal show was you guys came off as legitimate fans, like we are. When we produce a festival, we're fans first and foremost. And we had the fortunate opportunity of getting one of your early, you guys reunited for us when you headlined the Comedy Tent in Columbus, Ohio. And then you had special guests like Rob Zombie and John Five join you on stage. You remember that?
It was Rock on the Range, I think, yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Is it shocking to you at all, or maybe not even, that you have this incredible fan base and support of that metal show when you go and you see what happens at our shows?
It really is, when it comes to that particular show. That show has now been off the air for 5 years. It doesn't replay anywhere. Viacom/VH1 owns all the old episodes. They do nothing with them, unfortunately. They're sitting in a vault somewhere. When fans post episodes up on YouTube, at some point, Viacom eventually ends up pulling them down. Why they're not doing anything with them, I don't know. But so you factor all that in, and it's amazing that there's not a day to this day that goes by where somebody doesn't ask me about it, and still ask about it coming back. And I really appreciate that. It was very much something I worked incredibly hard to put together. I worked incredibly hard to get it on the air. I worked incredibly hard to keep it on the air for every episode that was on. We were very much the little show that could, and it made a connection that I'm very proud of. And, what you touched on and what you connected to in the show was very important to me. I mean, from the get-go, that was sort of a mandate. Hey, we've got to talk on this thing like we would if we were at a bar with friends. And, Don and Jim were my friends before that show. And I brought them into it because they would come and sit in my radio studio and just shoot the shit with me. So we had the conversation from the start. I said, guys, the way we bust each other's balls, the way we talk when we're hanging out, we got to do that on the show. Not everyone's going to like everything everybody says, but I think it's important to be genuine and real. And I think that really resonated and worked. But that show in and of itself could be a book, and it may be one day. But it was I'd worked at VH1 Classic prior to that, which is how it came about. And I don't like talking about it so much in the past tense, because we are still looking at and trying to find good opportunities and the right opportunity to potentially do it again. But I'm not going to lie, it's a huge challenge, because when you get outside of the bubble of us, meaning rock fans, and you get to the big networks or the big streaming heads or whatever, they don't have an appreciation or knowledge of this stuff. They just look at it as, we don't know who those people are you're talking to. And so when you get outside the rock bubble, it's a really hard sell. But you never say never, and we're all still friends, and we hope to do it again one day.
Let's go down a couple trunk rails if we can. With the induction of Rush and Cheap Trick and Kiss and Def Leppard, where are you today with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Well, everybody knows that I've been a big opponent of it and incredibly outspoken about it on radio and TV for decades.
Yeah, you dubbed it the Hall of Shame.
Yes. That being said, I don't do that for effect, and I don't do that just to create controversy. I do it because that's how I feel. So if I'm being fair, and I've said this on the air recently quite a bit, you have to also give credit where credit is due for improvement. And there's clearly been improvement, because we now have Rush and Deep Purple and Kiss and Cheap Trick and Alice Cooper in. So that's great. This last ballot, you finally saw Thin Lizzy, Motorhead, Pat Benatar, others that I've felt have been long snubbed. Even though they didn't get in, they finally at least showed up on the ballot, so there's some awareness and recognition. And the other thing I'll say in credit to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and trust me, they know, and I work with people on the committee, they know full well how critical I've been of it, is about 6-7 years ago, they made me a voter. So I have a full vote for the inductions. And if you think about it, I mean, they didn't really have to do that. They could have said, screw this guy. All he does is slam us. We're not giving him a voice. And I could have been like, oh, screw those guys. I'm not going to take their, get involved. But then that would have been a joke, because if I want to try to affect change, there's an opportunity for my voice to be heard with a vote. And I have to give credit to Tom Morello on that, because Tom, who's a good friend, reached out to me and he said, he's on the nominating committee, Tom is, and he reached out to me and he said, hey, he goes, I told them you need to be a voter. Are you up for it? I said, yeah. So I've voted for the last 6 years, probably. I've been a voter, and I still will knock it. And I still went crazy when a lot of those bands I just mentioned didn't get in this year. But I do think there have been positive strides.
Good. By the way, quick trivia question. The line that I open off stage with DWP with, which started with "Hello there, ladies and gentlemen." Do you know who says that? Do you know what song that is? I got to stump the trunk one day. The last pet peeve that you and I seem to agree upon. We are at DWP such a big proponent of live rock and roll. What we always scratch our heads are when rock bands are basically not live at our shows. You have the Foo Fighters who can play for 6 hours, no click track, wheels are coming off, it's beautiful. A band like Hailstorm, Lizzie has said she can't even listen to a click or something in her ears. It will take off the innocence and the mystique of it all for her. And I know you've kind of voiced your opinion on that too.
It's been a soapbox issue for me for the last year or two, because I've seen it escalate. I've seen it get way worse. I have had the artists like Hailstorm and countless others that do take pride in doing everything real and live and singing everything real and live. And they will come to me backstage or after show and be like, imagine how you feel if you're a band that you put so much work into doing a great sounding live show, the rehearsals, the work you put in, and you're on a festival stage and the band before or after you plays and is basically lip syncing or playing to a million tracks. And that audience doesn't know any better. And they're out there saying, man, can you imagine how great whatever band sounded? And you're a band like Hailstorm who actually just drained your guts on stage to be real. And you got to hear that from people. Well, yeah, I could sound that great too, and I can't play or sing. So it's an epidemic. It's a problem. It's got to be stopped. And I think about this all the time, Gary. It's become the norm and completely accepted in pop music.
Yes.
Can't happen in rock. That's not what rock is about. And here's the thing. If you recall, I think it was Saturday Night Live, Ashley Simpson performed on there and got busted lip syncing. And there was a ton of controversy about it. She took the bullets all that time and copped to it. Now in the world of pop, it's just kind of like laughed at. It's like you hear people talk about these great performances in the pop world they saw, but it's not real. How can you say it's great? What's the difference between having a good or a bad night? I saw Aerosmith in Vegas on their residency. They had a bad night. At the end of the show, Stephen and Joe said to the audience, well, that was a bit of a train wreck, huh? But Stephen said, but we had fun. Did you have fun? And the place went crazy. It was real. It was live. Sure, they had a couple musicians helping them. There's nothing wrong with that. If someone's off mic, that's what it's supposed to sound like. That's the energy and the vibe of live.
That's rock and roll. It's supposed to be about, it's supposed to be about some spacing, about what you don't play. It doesn't have to be filled with 40 vocal tracks. And it's about a miss note. And it's about David Lee Roth going, oh, I fucked up the lyrics again. That's beautiful. It's not a Broadway play every night.
Doesn't have to sound like the record. That's why it's live. You can go there and the living on the edge, flying by the seat of your pants, having jamming something out. I mean, it's just there's so many things wrong with it, and unfortunately, it's look, the artists that don't do it And there's a good amount that don't, so I give credit there. And I got to be clear when I talk about this, because this has come up too. If you're an artist and you have a keyboard on one song, and you don't want to carry a keyboard player, and you're running that little keyboard pad on a track, big deal. That's not what I'm talking about.
Right.
If you're an artist and you have orchestration in one song, I don't expect you to carry an orchestra. What I'm talking about is instruments, vocals, backing vocals, lead vocals, all of this stuff that's not being real. And that's just, that's just not what live rock and roll is supposed to be about. It flies in the face of everything that we love about rock music. And I think I'm really happy I'm seeing a lot more people speak out and speak up about it, including some artists. And, the artists have to work with some of these bands, so they don't want to get too out there on it. But what they will do is put the onus on these bands and let them know by taking credit for doing everything real from the stage. And I love that they're doing that, because it puts, little heat on the band on before or after them to say, oh, geez, I hope we don't get snagged here. Okay, well, don't worry about getting snagged. Get your chops together and go do it for real.
The last thing I want to bring up before we go into our famous encore round is, and we are off stage with DWP, we have Eddie Trunk on with us. You are obviously a major leader, cheerleader of rock, especially new rock and roll. But you're not so quick to just anoint somebody. You've critical is maybe not the right word, but before bands are anointed, like I just keep on thinking of Ghost when I think of you, a band that we love. But all of a sudden they were, like overnight, okay, they're the next one. They're the next Rob Zombie, or they're the next arena band. And you were not so quick, I kind of just want to talk about that. And, Greta Van Fleet is another band who we love that. And I think you agree with us. We champion them. I think you were on board early, but there was a big backlash about anointing them. Are we that hungry and desperate to have the next one? Or I guess what I'm saying is, why are you maybe more critical than you would think on a new band?
My only thing, and you see, my thing, Gary, having done this now, coming up on almost, gosh, do I dare say 40
don't age
years
yourself,
in a few years, but I'm sometimes just honest to a fault. And people ask me, like, when I get excited about a band, like, what does it take? Like, every day I go on my show, and if there's something new I really like, I'll talk about it or play it. Hey, how can I get that or whatever? And I'm very proud of the fact of saying it can't be bought. Like, it's not like, I don't care who your manager is, your agent is, how nice of a person you are, who's in my ear or what. I just have to feel it and feel genuine. I feel I owe that to my audience. Now, I'm not saying you have to agree with me, but it's just for me to have like a real strong feeling about a band. I'm not just going to go with the flow. I never went with the flow. I listen with my own ears. I watch with my own eyes, and I say, maybe one day it gets to what everyone's saying, but I don't feel it's there yet. So a band like Greta Van Fleet is an example. I had them on my show a couple times, really early on. Real nice kids, rooting for them all the way. Yeah. But what I've said consistently is, I hope as they grow and evolve, they kind of find more of their own sound and evolve into more of their own thing. Ghost, I've had Tobias on a couple times, and the same deal. And he and I have had some great conversations about this. And I love where those bands went, just because we need new bands leading the charge. Yeah. So I'm rooting for all of them, but I've yet to be like completely floored by anyone. But there's a ton of new bands I love. A band that I was on early that I absolutely love that does do really well is the Struts. Love the Struts, and I love Rival Sons. Sons.
You've been a champion of Rival Sons more than, maybe it's more trendy to be a cheerleader of somebody like Ghost, but you've been somebody like Rival Sons or Dirty Honey is somebody you've taken on, and I think that's really consistent from the start of this session together. You're another side of the tracks guy. Because it's popular doesn't mean like, oh, my stamp of approval.
And that goes back to how we started this conversation all those years as a 16-year-old kid in high school, where I could have easily fallen in line with what everybody said I should like to be the in kid. And I was like, I couldn't fake it. So there's a lot of bands I like and respect. There's a lot of bands I'm excited for. I got to tell you, I'm really excited and optimistic about where new music has been the last few years and new things that are coming. There's the last 3-4 years for me has been great in terms of some great bands that I've heard that I really like. It's hard because there's so much coming at people, because you don't need a record label to make music. There's no gatekeepers anymore. That the biggest challenge I find for the fans is finding it and knowing it's there, because literally anybody can put out music. So that's where you guys come in terms of bands you like, putting them on side stages or what have you at your festivals. That's where I come in, where if something that really moves me, that I've got platforms, social media, whatever, say, hey, check this out. I just got turned on by somebody from Mexico about a band called Madre Sun. And They sent me a link, and I was like, man, this is killer. I just heard a band the other day called the Bloody Heels. Like, this is really cool. So I'll step out and do my part that I can for some of these up and coming bands, but the volume of stuff out there is really, really heavy to navigate.
I know. So will we. I'll go public with it. We booked Greta Van Fleet for $500. You're going to have to add a couple zeros on them now. But if we believe in something, and I don't want to turn this into like a hailstorm session, but they opened up the third stage for us the first time they played. And then they came back and opened up the second stage for us. And then they became a main stage band. And they're one of our favorite bands. Five Finger Death Punch, same thing. If we could do our part and prop up the Struts and a band like the Like Machines that our friend Kim Britton turned us on to.
I love them. Love them out
too.
of Georgia.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great trio. So we're all about that. And it gives me such pride putting the Foo Fighters and Metallica and Guns N' Roses on our festival, like amazing. But seeing a band, like the Struts, who were like a 1 o'clock band, and now they're sundown night band for us. That's how we could move this rock format forward.
I'll jump in real quick on something,
please.
Though, and here's what I always think back on along those lines, right? You're talking to a guy right now who was one of the first people in America to play Metallica. And that record was brought to me in 1983 in my first year in radio when I was doing a metal show by the guy that signed Metallica to their independent deal, Johnny Z. He literally knocked on the door unannounced and begged me to play this unknown band on the radio.
Was this DHA or Drew University?
DHA.
Okay.
And I have, in the other room, I have that record, which Johnny wrote on the cover, Ed, you were the first. Thank you, John Z. He couldn't get arrested with this band called Metallica. He put his life and his mortgage on the line for them. And I stepped out and played it. And I said, you know what? People ask me all the time, what did you think when you did that? And I'm like, I would love to tell you I heard the future or whatever, but I didn't know what I heard. Because to me, I never heard music that extreme. And my point in telling you that story is all of these bands we love, like the Metallicas and Foo Fighters or what have you, were new at one point trying to get going. So totally. My interest is always in like, because I've got stories like that throughout my career. It's like, who's the next Metallica? Skid Row came to me before they had Sebastian Bach in the band and like, hey, we're trying to get going. Can you do something? Who's the next one? Like, that's exciting to me still. Is Dirty Honey the next one? Is Jared James Nichols the next Randy Rhoads? I don't know. Like that, like you hope and you want that to see that happen and you want to be a part of it.
Well, here's what I'll say to you on that is we as festival promoters feel that more, and I think you will agree, today and tomorrow than we did 4 or 5 years ago. It feels like rock there's more of it. And I couldn't have said that to you 4 or 5 years ago, but I just feel like it's coming on again. I'm
very optimistic. I really am.
Yep. Well, we're off stage with DWP, a very special industry moment with Eddie Trunk. We're at the point where we like to call the encore round, where I'm going to throw you some rapid fire questions. First thing that pops to your head is the answer, even if it's wrong. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. First concert ever.
Kiss, December 16th, 1977, Madison Square Garden. Piper was the opening act, which was Billy Squier's first group, who I still love to this day.
How about that? Piper, Billy Squier. Well done.
I love Piper and I love Billy Squier. I love him.
Best concert you've ever been to? Something came up in your mind. Come on. Something popped up. Something's in there. Should I rephrase it? Best Iron Maiden concert you've ever been to?
Best UFO concert?
You buried my lead.
You know, there's just too many to even navigate as far as best concerts, but I'll go back to, and I usually give the answer on this as this only because it was such a huge moment for me, but that first concert I ever saw, Kiss, a Live 2 tour, Madison Square Garden, 13, first time in the Garden, first time at a concert.
No Knicks, no Islanders, that was the first time you stepped foot into the Garden?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And
you popped your cherry. I get it.
Yeah. And the thing I remember about it was two things. I was so high up in a section that they called it the Garden, the Blue Heaven, because the seats were blue all the way at the top. And the idea, and people have a hard time understanding this, but you got to put yourself in the headspace of a 12, 13-year-old kid. I was so high up, but I couldn't understand the concept of amplification. So I was trying to figure out how somebody this small could still sound that loud where I was sitting that far away. It was just like it blew my mind, and that's the one thing that resonated with me. That and all the bootleggers out on the 33rd selling shirts and running from the cops.
Huge. If you weren't doing this, if rock and roll wasn't in your life, what would you be doing today?
Wow.
I'm stumping the trunk right now, everybody.
You are, because as much as my dad told me to have a backup plan, I never really did. I never really did. You mean nothing in the music industry? Nothing music business related?
I might answer it for you. I don't know, and you may disagree because of it's my segue into the T-shirt you're wearing.
Sports?
Yeah.
I was never good enough, though.
Or to have a career in it. I could see you. The way you talk about your Giants is what reminds me how I talk about my Raiders or my Lakers. You have a passion for it, and you have pain for your Giants. As I've had a tough 19 years. Jamie, who works, as you know, who works for us at DWP, she's a Chiefs fan. So twice a year she beats my ass, and it's just been tough. And now she's a Super Bowl winner. You know,
future is very bright for her too with that young quarterback whose dad used to be a pitcher on my Mets.
There you go.
So same name, Pat Mahomes. I remember his dad when he pitched for the Mets. Yeah, no, that's an interesting thing, though. I mean, maybe something in the business of sports would be really cool to do. But anything that I really give an honest answer about somehow connects to music. Like I maybe would have tried to open a record store, or I worked in the industry for 4 years as an A&R guy and for a label. So maybe I would have tried to stay in that area a little bit more. But almost all roads lead to something to do with music or broadcasting. But it's an interesting thing to think about. I mean, I could have chased something in the sports area.
All right, I'll move on. If given the choice, you get one: a UFO Strangers of the Night in full reunion, or the Giants make the Super Bowl.
Make or win the Super Bowl?
Make the Super Bowl.
UFO reunion. Nobody remembers when your team loses the Super Bowl.
Just to get in.
I don't even remember 2000, the Super Bowl against the Ravens. That's out of my memory bank. That didn't even happen. And sadly for the UFO reunion, we wouldn't have Paul Raymond anymore because he passed away recently. But,
yes, he did.
4/5 would still be pretty darn cool.
And where I agree with Eddie from earlier on, there is no such thing as a guilty pleasure. Having said that, Eddie and I do share in a weird, whacked out love for UFO, as does Kirk of Metallica, as does many people in our industry.
Steve Harris.
We're on the feet.
Steve
Rick
Harris of
Austin,
Iron Maiden.
Yeah, sure. Tons of musicians.
Yeah,
because they were powerful. They had the songs. They had songs.
Maybe the most underrated band in rock history, in my opinion.
Did it break your heart that when you learned that Strangers in the Night was basically not a live album?
It is.
Yeah,
it is.
Didn't they overdub a bunch of shit?
No.
Really? Come on.
I'll send you the interview. Hold on. Ron Nevison, who produced that record.
Yes.
I did a more than hour-long interview with him and the guy who engineered it, Mike Klink, who Guns N' Roses used Mike Klink to produce Appetite because they were such big fans of Strangers, which was engineered by Klink. But I talked to Klink at Music Cares this year in LA for Aerosmith, and I talked to Nevison, and both said the most astonishing thing about that record, which you're right, most classic 70s live records were not live. Strangers was like, except for 2 songs, live. There were 2 songs that were done in a studio in a sound check because they weren't done in the set that they wanted in the record. But outside of that, that's actually live. And the band can't believe they caught that performance live because by their own admission, they were so coked up they didn't know what they were doing.
All right.
And that's from the band, not me.
Okay, I'll take that. We're with Eddie Trunk. Thanks for spending time with us. Last question on the encore round. All right. Mets World Series champs or Giants Super Bowl champs? You got to pick one.
Well, it's been a lot longer for the Mets.
86, right?
Yeah. But I still go Giants because reason is because love both teams, but to this, like if I only had one sport and one team that I could ever follow, which who knows with this pandemic, the way we're going could be the case, but it's football and the Giants. To me, football is appointment viewing. There's only 16 games. There's 162 baseball games in normal times. And to me, like, football is the one thing, a Giants game is the one thing I like plan around. If I'm on the road, I make sure that I've got the hours, the time conversion, where's the sports bar, how can I watch, is it on the TV in my room, in the hotel? So football is like, it's so special because there's so few games, and the Giants I just get so worked up about. So I'm going with the Big Blue.
All right, last question.
How do you feel about the Raiders going to Vegas?
My short answer is I'm very torn. I feel they will have no home games. Again, to talk about Jamie, she's planning a Kansas City trip with all her season ticket holder buddies. When the Packers play or the Steelers, they're just going to take it over. There's no home field. I don't have a love for Las Vegas like I have a love for Los Angeles or Oakland. I'm a California kid. But when I see the silver and black on TV, I see Raider Nation. Something in me will probably pop. I mean, it's like it's like a favorite band. You know, it's somebody said being a Yankees fan or a Raiders fan or a Giants fan is like being a fan of Iron Maiden or Led Zeppelin. You hand it down. It's generational. And I think it's a beautiful thing. I got one more for you. A bonus on Encore, Eddie. An alien comes down from outer space. He has 4 minutes with you. You have to show him one song. He's got 4 minutes or longer, one song. What song would you play that describes Eddie Trunk to this alien who's never met you?
Ooh. Well, just that kind of sums up probably Detroit Rock City. Because it's the first song I heard in terms of like that really, Destroyer, kid dropping the needle, the whole intro piece, and it was like game over. So if the alien asks, like, what made you be so into this, here it is. That's kind of where I would go.
Thank you, Eddie. Last comment, as a lot of people watching off stage with DWP right now are in young bands, or they maybe want to manage a band, or they want to get into the business. Any tips during these tough times that we're in that you can give to our rock and roll fans out there who want to get in this crazy world?
Well, from the standpoint of bands trying to get something going, the thing I always tell people all the time is this business is all about songs. and you got to have songs. I meet so many young bands and young managers and people that are trying to figure out why they can't get their band further down the road. And I listen to the material, and it's a hard thing because there's very few people that will tell them the truth in their inner circle. Their mother, their girlfriend, their boyfriend, their husband, their wife, they're not going to tell them it's just not good enough yet. And you need to find somebody that can do that and is an educated voice about that. I can't tell you how many bands will send me stuff or ask me to listen to something, and they'll tell me, I really, really want you to tell me what you think of this. And I'm like, you really want the truth, or you want me to tell you what you want to hear? No, we really want to know. And then you tell them it's just not there yet, and then they get upset. So you need to take that direction from people who have a voice and are educated in that world. And I say this all the time. You can go on YouTube and you can find a million people that can play amazing shredding guitar or drums or bass, 10-year-old kids doing this crazy stuff. That's all great. But you can't go on YouTube and find that many people who can create out of thin air great, enduring songs. And it's a very, very tough thing. It's easier said than done. But however you have to accomplish that, whether it be with outside writers or finding like-minded people, but the ability to write and create great songs is, I think, something that not enough people talk about.
We'll leave it at that. Eddie, thanks for your time. Thanks for joining us off stage with DWP. I want to see you at one of our DWP festivals sooner than later, please.
Yeah, please. I hope so. And to your team, hang in there. I know this has been a brutal year for everybody in the business you're in. Everybody's taken their hits in some ways, but what you guys do there is incredibly important for the rock community. It's incredibly important for rock fans. For decades, I heard from people, we don't have any great rock festivals in America. They're all in Europe. Ever since you guys came along, no more. So you don't hear that anymore, and that's important. So I know it's been a tough year, but looking forward to better things ahead, and thanks for having me.
Laters.